I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about psychology and true crime. Trigger warning for today's video, it does include difficult information about a very tragic case out of Connecticut where a man who's now 32 years old was held captive by these allegedly held captive by his stepmother for over 20 years. And he also talks about really all of his life feeling hungry. And there are a lot of details to this case that are extremely troubling. Okay. And so that's my warning. If you need to click off at some point, I totally understand. Thank you all for being here. And please, I have a link down below to Grizzly True Crimes video. She did a thorough she reviewed the police document that went over all of the evidence. We are not going to do all of that. So we're going to take a look at the press conference. And then also, because I watched Grizzly True Crimes video, I have some additional backstory and information that we can interject. But please let me know if y'all have questions about this case. Okay. So let's hop right into the press conference. And let me give you a little bit of a backstory before we get into the press conference. And it's my understanding that in February, the 32-year-old man, he was being locked in a room, and the lock is on the outside door. And as he got older, because this started when he was around 11 years old, being locked in a room without heat or air conditioning all day and night, and given very limited food and water. But what ended up happening is the locks. So initially, it might have been the locks started to upgrade to stronger and stronger locks, probably as he got older and stronger as well. He did also, at one time, he did escape from the room and just went to the kitchen to get food because he was hungry. And he describes after that incident that his stepmother physically harmed him, and how he was able to get safe, how we found out about his condition and how he was being held is because he set a fire in his room. And after his father passed, the stepmother gave him some of his father's belongings. And in one of the pockets of some of his father's clothes, there was a lighter. And he held on to that. And and he needed to make a big enough, you know, fire so that there would need to be a police response. And the fire department, everybody came. He was treated for smoke inhalation, but at 32 years old, he weighed 68 pounds. I will say that again. At 32 years old, he weighed 68 pounds. So I have a 7-year old, and I haven't, but 60 pounds is normally a child under the age of 12. Normally, like 60 pounds is normally a small child, and he's 5'9", 5'9", 5'9" and 68 pounds. And so he's currently hospitalized and being treated. It's my understanding, based on all of this information, he is being treated for the physical ailments, and then he will likely need mental health treatment as well. And it's just super sad, super, super sad case. Let me know if y'all have questions. Lisa, thank you so much for recommending this case. And it reminds me of the so Timothy Ferreter case. That was the one, the boy that was locked. So Timothy was the father. And so Timothy Ferreter, he locked his adoptive son in a room. It was like a small box. It wasn't even like a room. And then it also reminds me of the case, I think it was Shanda. Y'all know Shanda Vander Ark. I think that was the one, but I know the last name was Vander Ark. It reminds me of that case as well, where there's this severe maltreatment. All right, so let's hop right into this press conference.
Um, we're here to talk about the crime that just occurred that everyone's talking about, and I just want to say that it's truly a horrifying, and it's beyond comprehension what occurred here. The young man's unimaginable suffering over the course of 2 decades is just a reminder of the darkness that does exist in our world. Our hearts and our prayers go out to him. We're committed to supporting him in every way possible as he begins to heal from this unimaginable trauma that he suffered. I do want to this morning, though, acknowledge and extend my deepest gratitude to Chief Fred Spagnola and the Waterbury Police Department for their unwavering dedication and relentless investigative efforts, as well as to Waterbury State's Attorney Maureen Platt and her office for their vital role in this case. Their tireless work has led to an arrest, but it's crucial to remember that this investigation is far from over, and there's a lot more work to be done. Unanswered questions remain. And we're going to continue to ensure that justice is fully served as more details emerge in the coming months. In the meantime, I would ask that the press and the community respect the young man's privacy as he begins to negotiate what will no doubt be a difficult and painful journey towards recovery. So please keep him in your thoughts and in your prayers. And with that, I will turn it over to Fred Spagnola, our Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. As you all know, on February 17th, around 8:40 p.m., Waterbury Police responded to 2 Blake Street on a report of a fire. Officers and fire investigators immediately realized there were some grave concerns about some of the conditions in the house. There were 2 occupants of the house, one being Kimberly Sullivan, the stepmother of the male victim. Officers and fire investigators quickly realized that there was a room in the house that appeared to have locks on it from the exterior portion of the house. They began to speak to the male victim, who disclosed that he was being held captive in the house for an extended period of time.
And I saw somebody mention that some people will blame homeschool for this. And what happened was when he was in 4th grade, the school noticed that he was always hungry, and he would ask for food from other kids. He would eat out of the trash can, that he was just always hungry. And there were CPS reports made at that time. I think the principal or some, because it's going to come up in this press conference, that some people have said that they talked to the police and the police deny that. And so I don't know what happened with those things, but the child ended up being pulled from school after those reports were made, because a lot of people say even in 4th grade that he did appear to be underweight. And then I'm also seeing some additional comments about people that have maybe done research. And then I'm also seeing from Lisa that people say this behavior started in kindergarten, because he says that the food issues started when he was 3 years old, that he has always been hungry. But it's my understanding that he was pulled from school in 4th grade. And then initially he was given worksheets to do, but never really did any official schooling. Okay. And he was found at 32 years old, and has significant physical and mental health concerns understandably.
Approximately 20 years. The investigation began from that point. We worked closely with the State's Attorney's Office, Maureen Platt, as well as Assistant State's Attorney Don Thurkelson, because frankly, what was being reported was unfathomable to us at that point in time. Through those investigative meetings and through search warrants, we were able to seize physical evidence and conduct interviews and dig up some more information that corroborated the victim's story. This investigation, as the mayor points out, continues, is very open and very active. We were able to obtain arrest warrants for Kimberly Sullivan. She was arrested yesterday. She was arraigned in Waterbury Superior Court. She's currently being held on a $300,000 bond.
And I do believe that she's been released on bond. When I Googled this, because this press conference is from, I want to say 8 days. Yes, this press conference is from 8 days ago. And so I saw a recent news article that it appears she has been released, which is fine. Like nobody, because the police are going to do their investigation. She has been charged, and there will be a trial that proceeds with this case.
Um, at this point, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
The biological father, we've learned that he recently left the home, and her lawyer is saying that we need to look deeper into his part in all of this. When it comes to the investigation, is he being held accountable at all?
The biological father is deceased and died in January of 2024.
And the biological father was also wheelchair bound, and she was a caregiver for the biological father as well. So the biological father, and this is no way excuse it, because he was likely aware of how his son was being treated. And so I understand why her lawyer might want to try to point the fingers, but she was another adult that likely participated, if not like led a lot of what's happened. And so that's the allegation. That's what's been alleged in this case. And we'll see what the evidence says and what all comes out, because the father died in 2024 and we are now in 2025, and he was still being confined. So she would be responsible for definitely, but like, so if she tried to blame the dad, but she was in the house as well.
Prior to his death, he was wheelchair bound from some medical conditions.
Okay. Also, it was reported to the school system that this boy at the time, now 32-year-old man, he was starving. He was asking other kids for lunch. I mean, is this a failure on the school system that this matter was not taken more seriously?
So we're doing some background investigation. There are two incidents that we had within our computer system of dealing with that address and with the family back in 2005. One was a request from DCF to do a welfare check at the location because children that the victim was familiar with hadn't seen him and they were concerned about him. Officers went to the house. The house was clean. It was lived in. They spoke to the victim at that point in time, and there were no.
And I just wonder if they spoke to the victim in front, like where the stepmother was, and he was likely afraid. It is really common. There can be a almost Stockholm syndrome. Like it is really common that if children are interviewed, and if it's in the place where they're being harmed, it's really common that they not get accurate information. That's why sometimes, but I don't know that they had enough to say meet us at social services and do the interview someplace else. I wonder if they checked into what type of homeschooling, because this child was supposed to be homeschooled, and it's my understanding that he wasn't a part of any official homeschool curriculum. Um, but it really is sad. And Lisa mentioned, and I saw an article from a former coworker of the stepmother that described her as like angry. Let me look it up again, because I think it was, yes, a former classmate and coworker describes her as argumentative and combative. All right. So this is a News 3 article where a former classmate and coworker describes Kimberly Sullivan as angry and argumentative, constantly lying. She wasn't well liked. And this person says she worked with her from 2019 to 2021. And she complained to them about being in debt and having to take care of her husband. Her husband was in a wheelchair. She hated when her shift was over and having to go home and take care of her husband. This is what this coworker alleges that she said. And the coworker also says that she talked positively about her two daughters, and never talked about her stepson. Never mentioned him. And so I will put a link to this article in the description as well. All right, let's keep going.
Cause for any alarm or any conditions that existed that would have led officers to believe anything other than a normal childhood and a normal family existence was occurring. But that was reported back to DCF, and that was the last that we were involved in that particular investigation. We were called back to the house in the latter part of April by the family who wanted to file a harassment complaint against members of the school district, saying that they were continuously reporting them to DCF and felt that they were trying to get the family in trouble and have the family investigated. We have no further information about where that went, other than there was no proof provided by the family that there was any type of harassment that was occurring.
And the sad thing about that is it sounds like there was clearly a problem, and nobody was able to get an idea of what the problem was. Because it's my understanding he got 2 bottles of water a day or 2 cups of water a day and a sandwich or 2 sandwiches, something like that. And that was all that he was fed. And it seems like there might have been times when food was withheld as well. And he created this elaborate system to be able to urinate in his room and then be able to like get rid of everything. But let me see the question, because it looks like there's a question. Okay. I've seen this behavior before where they lock up children while living their lives. What causes parents to do that? And there can be a lot of different reasons. There can be sadistic reasons. So when we think of Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, there was like a sadistic punishment. That was the reason in that case. In the um, Timothy Ferreter case with his adopted son, he was trying to use it as a form of punish, but this child could not do right. Like this, there was nothing this child could do to get out of the box that he was living in. And sometimes what I've seen personally, this is just my own personal thought and view. Sometimes there's this hatred and contempt for the child. It seems like there was no love that she had or care for this child. It seems like she might have viewed him as and like, oh, like this annoying extra, like she didn't, and now this is just my thoughts, and so I do not know, and she did not talk to police. So she has lawyered up. She has a lawyer, and she is not giving any statements to the police. So we will see what comes out in the evidence, if there are text messages, what evidence they're able to find regarding any thoughts or feelings she might have had towards him. But the bare minimum is providing a child shelter, food, like love. Like that's the bare minimum. And it does not seem like this child had an adequate bare minimum, which can cause, so neglect has a significant impact on the brain. It sounds like when she left, the father would sometimes let him come out and like watch TV, or like they would do yard work outside. He was only let out of the room to do chores. There were times he was allegedly locked up in the room for 24 hours, but it was mostly from 20 to 24 hours a day that he was locked in that room. And then I saw a follow-up question to that one. Were her daughters aware of his confinement? So I think the police are likely going to try to interview the daughters. I don't know if they will lawyer up. Because if they are legal adults, now I don't think they were ever involved. I don't know. So that's where I don't know what'll happen with any additional family members. Because also, what about the family that hadn't seen him because I think he said the last time he left the house I think he might have said he was 14 years old. That's what I'm remembering from watching Grizzly True Crimes video. If you would like a deep dive into this case, I have a link in the description. Grizzly True Crime did a like she did. She reviewed the documents that goes over a lot of what they have in this case. She obviously didn't care for the child. I'm curious why she didn't kick him out of the house when he became an adult. And that's where I wonder if there's this like if she, because he likely wasn't prepared for the real world because they didn't teach him. So I don't know that he did long, like, because like if he left the house, I think people would have found out what she had done to him. Because I don't know if she was ever going to let him leave. It just doesn't sound like there was ever going to be a life for him outside of that room. Because the minute he gets out, everybody finds out about his life and what happened. And she's going to go to trial because of this. Was there any known behavior issues that might have led them to start treating this child so horribly? And so I wonder, I don't know when the stepmother and father, I don't know when they got together. I don't know if that was when so I don't know when she came into his life, but it sounds like it was definitely when he was because the 20 years that they're talking about is from when he was about 11 or 12 years old. And that initial confinement began. Um, that's what that's and then we also talk about that sometimes in this world, people sometimes just do evil, cruel things that like so we normally think what mother, what person would ever do this to any other person? Because you wouldn't lock up a dog for 24 hours a day. You wouldn't lock up and I'm in this child, so people have so I'm not trying, but I'm just saying the level of cruelty in this case is just absolutely horrific. And um it's my understanding that his room was smaller than a jail cell. I believe in this press conference, they're going to mention that. This was an extremely, because it almost sounds like it was, because they're calling it a room, but if it's smaller than a jail cell, I'm wondering if it was, I think it was technically a room, but it sounds like a closet. Like it sounds like a very, very small place, very, very small confined space. Oh, so bad. And his teeth were all rotten. His hair was matted. Um, 68 pounds at 32 years old. 68 pounds. Just such a sad case. All right. We're going to go back to the press conference.
You know, as far as the school district's concerned, we are looking at those records now. We're working with DCF to look at records that they may have from previous investigations, and that's part of the ongoing investigation.
But Chief, people were
5'9".
filing complaints, even if it was with DCF continuously, as the family, I guess, alleged. You know, was there more contact from DCF, and do you know anything about how that was gone?
So the only contact we had was back in April of 2005 when we were notified to conduct that welfare check. And again, we're looking for those records now to determine where that investigation may have gone, but there was no further reported information to the Waterbury Police Department.
So when you had an officer go out there that first time, you're saying everything looked normal, it looked like a normal childhood. But the school district, the principal told us that the child looked really small, malnourished, was drinking from a urinal at school, was taking kids' food. So, I mean, with all that information, the officer still concluded that the child was safe at that time?
Well, the officer didn't have that information. So this
And so we don't know what was reported to the officers. And I've definitely worked cases where sometimes the child wasn't believed, or if the child did not say that's what they were doing directly to the officer, that it was just very difficult if it was based on someone else's report or based on what someone else had observed. I also want to go back to the behavior issues question because it is going to come up because I think they're going to ask about his mental health or did he have any diagnoses, because sometimes you hear about children with autism or children with ADHD or certain behavior issues sometimes being harmed because they require additional support or because the parents aren't able to manage their behavior. The biggest thing that it sounds like with this case is that there was just significant trauma. Like that's what it sounds like. The stepmother is going to say there was never any official diagnosis because I saw somebody say SSA benefit. It doesn't sound like he was on SSI or any type to my knowledge. And y'all correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. To my knowledge, he does not have any formal diagnosis that we're aware of. Okay. So why do you think the stepsisters didn't report it? And that's where I think there was some fear of retaliation from the stepmother. It sounds like the stepmother was pretty controlling and it's just yes. And Afton, I also just wonder what the story is with the biological mother as well. I've seen some comments in the chat that yes. But so I do not know where biomother is. All right, let's keep this going.
Former principal is now disclosing all this information, and I believe in the news clips I've reviewed that he was making calls to DCF and other agencies. Waterbury Police were never notified by this particular principal about those conditions. So this is all information that is coming out now as this case unfolds.
I believe he said he called police, but you have no record of that.
Well, I believe he's wrong if that's what he said, because there is no record of it.
Can you talk about, you said that there was some evidence that corroborates the story of the gentleman. Can you talk any more about what that is, or how do you go about corroborating a story like this that's so extraordinary?
Right. So there's some physical evidence that was seized from the house that does corroborate the fact that that room did have exterior locks on it and a number of different styles of exterior locks, as was explained during an interview with the victim throughout the years. It appeared that the locks increased in security levels as time progressed, and obviously he became older and maybe a little bit stronger. So that's certainly one component, and then there's other components of the fire investigation that are part of the evidence package as well.
And I'm sorry if you said this, but were these the only two individuals living in that home?
Yes, there were two siblings that were in and out of the home, but they have since moved out.
So say DCF had all this information, the principal's saying, they don't share any of that with police?
You're going to have to talk to DCF about what their protocol is on when they share information with police. DCF does work closely with police departments. It provides a lot of information to police departments in a number of different ways. I don't know what their protocol is on when they share that information.
And I'm big on reform to our child welfare system. So first of all, our social workers, the people that investigate these crimes, are not paid enough. So that is not, and there's high turnover. I don't know about your area, but I know in my area, when I'm working with a child in foster care, if they keep the same foster worker for longer than 2-3 years, if they're in foster care for an extended period of time, like that's like, so there in our area, we can have high turnover at times with social work positions. They're often given extremely high caseloads, and the investigators neglect. Now, and it does sound like he was locked in his room. And but I wonder if they didn't tour the entire house, if they didn't look at his room, or if somehow they didn't realize that there was a lock on the door. So those are just my thoughts. Hindsight's 2020. Good. So I'm just sharing.
So that would be something that they would have to respond to.
Chief, how's the victim doing now? Obviously, some serious conditions we read about, PTSD and depression. What can you share about how the victim's faring?
Right. So obviously he's got a lot of mental health issues that he has to deal with at this point in time. There are a lot of physical conditions that he's working on as well. I mean, here's an adult that was 5'9" and 68 pounds. There's some apparent orthopedic issues. The room was very small. Honestly, when I read about it and talk to the investigators and overlook the interviews, it was worse than the conditions of a jail cell. So there's a lot of physical therapy that he'll have to go through. There's a lot of healing that he'll have to go through mentally. And I can tell you this: our investigators, and I'll specifically point out Detective Steve Brownell and Detective John Page, who were the lead investigators in this particular case, but all the investigators, the entire Criminal Investigations Bureau has been very supportive of the victim. They took a collection up and bought him some items to try to make life more comfortable, some clothing and some books and some things to kind of get him along the way as he goes through this process. But, our plan is to continue to support him. He's going to need a lot of support as he travels through this and tries to figure out how to navigate what has occurred and what the future holds for him.
Chief, I think a lot of people are wondering, like, where are his other relatives? Did no one else see this man for 20 years that they were able to, say anything, report anything to police? Like, was his stepmother the only person in his life? Did he have? You said he had 2 siblings. Where is everyone else? Where are all the relatives?
So the backdrop is being formed, and this is again why the investigation continues. It appears that if it was a very controlling situation going on regarding the victim's condition, his whereabouts, his connection with other family members, other people in the community, other friends. Information was very guarded on what was released and when he was able to see other members of the family and other members of the community. And I think that, I know, from information provided in the interviews that there was a level of fear on retaliation on what would occur if information was released or help was provided to the victim by family members.
Were there any injuries as a result of the fire?
Smoke inhalation, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if there's any long-term effects from what occurred at the fire, but on scene, he was treated for smoke inhalation.
How did he get out of the house? Did he get out of the house on his own, or did firefighters have to rescue him?
He was assisted out of the house.
Will you be identifying him at any point?
That's a great question. Not at this time. And I don't really know when, if at all.
Where's the mother?
And I'm glad that they're protecting the identity of of this individual. I'm glad that he's being protected, because this is a very, very difficult, tragic case.
The mother has not been involved in the victim's life.
From the beginning.
Pretty much, from all accounts, around 2 years old.
The suspect is denying all the allegations through her attorney. Has she said anything about how her stepson would be 68 pounds, for example?
Kimberly Sullivan refused to talk to us immediately.
Do you have a picture of the door lock?
And so Kimberly Sullivan is likely going to, who's the stepmother defendant in this case, she's likely going to deny everything. But I do think this victim is now at least in a physically safe place, I hope, and was able to immediately tell the police everything. And it sounds like he was just looking for this out. It seems like he really could have passed. And his situation was dire. 68 pounds. That's severe dehydration, malnourishment for an adult. 5'9", 68 pounds. Gosh.
That was taken as evidence?
I'm 100% certain that we do. I'd have to confer with the state's attorney if we were going to release any information like that at this time.
Does Kimberly Sullivan, have any prior criminal convictions?
No prior criminal history with us here at the police department.
Neighbors were telling us that if he had knocked on the window, they would have helped him. Were there any other attempts besides this fire to try to get him some help?
No, again, I don't, from what we've put together so far, no, and that's because of a fear of retaliation. I mean, he, in his room, to relieve himself, right, had this elaborate mechanism that he created where he would urinate in a bottle, and he had straws connected to the bottom of the bottle, and he found a hole in the storm window frame that he was able to put these straws through. And he did that because the storm window itself wouldn't open up, and he was fearful that if that he broke that storm window or tried to open it up, that there would be some retaliation. So, I'm certainly not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but there's a lot of nuances to people that are victims and held captive, and I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this particular gentleman.
And I just wanted to talk about his resilience, as Lisa mentioned, because the fact that he got to the place where he developed this plan, he thought about starting a fire, and that was how he chose to, because he could have died in this was a really desperate act, because it required the response of the fire department. He was let out. I think she's the one that called that called 911, or the police to come because of the fire. And but all of this is just so heartbreaking. So how he got safe was by starting that fire. All other reports were technically unfounded. So any other reports that were made by the school or any other family members, um, yeah. And so that's where I don't know at what point he got to the 68 pounds, because I wonder his health when his dad was still alive. Because I could imagine that things could have gotten more cruel for him after his father's death. I don't know that for sure, but those are just some of my thoughts as we're listening to this. And there's this like punishment, cruelty, sadistic part of this, to my knowledge, they're not saying that it was a punishment, or like they just locked him in there and just kept him in there and severely restricted his water and food, severely restricted it, and did not seem to notice or care that he was frail, because he didn't receive dental work. Like he didn't go to the dentist. I don't think he was like brushing his teeth. Like it doesn't sound like he was able to maintain appropriate hygiene, because he was just kept in there so much and for so long. Just so sad. All right.
In that area to really determine all the impact and all the effects that this long-term condition has really brought on him.
I take it you haven't had a case like this before.
33 years of law enforcement. This is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed. Right? I mean, honestly, when we first started talking about it, we really couldn't believe it. It took a lot of convincing amongst ourselves to just really accept what was going on, and it's really hard to talk about still. I mean, it's shuddering to think that someone would treat any person, let alone a family member or someone that was entrusted as a guardian or a parental figure in this way.
Mayor, just can you share your personal thoughts and reaction, just knowing something so disturbing happened in this community?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's just unfathomable that anyone could treat someone this way, as the chief said, especially within the relationship that they had. It's devastating. And
Sadly, when there is child mistreatment, it's most likely by a family member. Like that's the most common type that there is. But this it goes against what we think of when we think of, besides like an evil stepmother. Like this goes against what we commonly think. And even if she hated him, you wouldn't think somebody would let it go this far, and yet it did. So to our not now, the maltreatment could have created some type of disability. To my knowledge, I'm not aware that he had any type of 504 plan or individualized education plan. There was no formal diagnosis. He wasn't in therapy, or like he didn't, there was no official diagnosis to my knowledge. Now, treatment like this, because he was severely socially isolated. The last time he had friends was when he was in 4th grade. Can you imagine? So he probably knows nothing of social media, or like so we're talking 20 years ago. He was 11. Like, a lot happens with technology in 20 years. And a lot happens in life. And I think he missed a lot. He's 32 years old, but mentally, so they will do assessments, they will figure things out. If I was assessing him, I would be careful to, and so let's say I'm just assessing him in April and he was just freed in February. I would be slow to diagnose like an intellectual disability, because it could be trauma. Like, he didn't have exposure to school, or to like from his last formal schooling was 4th grade. So I would be slow to diagnose anything, because he suffered such significant neglect. Like, this is a horrific case. And so with this level of neglect, like that could cause organic brain changes. So I would first want the person to be safe, and then to see how they respond to interventions over time. Okay. And so neglect, severe. So malnourishment. So he was restricted from food. He was locked in a room. So seclusion. He was severely isolated. He was not able to interact with family members. Like, he wasn't able to come and go. He wasn't able to leave his room from 11 years old to 32. All right. All right. So let's make myself small and keep this going.
And, we're going to make sure that the systems are working into the future to see what might have happened 20 years ago when this may have been reported. But at this point, it appears that this was just really an isolated sense, and that they were locked in there all by themselves. And through fear and intimidation, she was able to keep it secret all that time.
So when you're talking about the future and other children, other families out there, I mean, if there's welfare checks, and the kids are told to lie about being fed.
It's very common.
What
Very
happens?
common.
Well,
Are they going to stay in these situations like he did, or?
Well, there's limits, I would think, to what you can do. We can send people out to check and look at it. I don't know what it looked like when the officer walked into the house in 2005, what the child looked like.
And my recommendation is to interview the child with, like, if you can interview them. So he was 5'9", not 6'8". He was 68 pounds. 68 pounds. He was 5'9", 5'9". Okay. And 68 pounds. Okay. All right. 68 pounds, 5'9", 5'9". All right. Oh, such a sad. Yeah, somebody, and so please, like, so somebody did say I did see that, but it was, and I just ignored it. But yeah, so he was 5'9". We have some international people that work in like meters and kilograms. Grizzly True Crime did the conversion. My brain can't math that fast, and so I'm not going to even try.
That's 2 decades ago. And so, it's hard. We can send people out, we can do the checks, we can make sure that teachers, and administrators are looking out for children, notice some of the telltale signs. I think we've come a long way as well in 20 years over looking for these things and being able to report them. Requirements of what has to go to DCF have changed over that time. So I think we can continue to do it. But can I tell you that it will never happen again? I don't think anyone can tell you that, because there's a lot of things that go into this that, can help keep it secret.
Where was she arrested in Southington?
I don't know. I could get you that information. I'm not sure exactly where she was arrested in Southington. You know, and it's important, you know, to piggyback on the mayor's response to your inquiry. You know, if you see something, say something. I know it's a cliche, and
It's true.
we talk about it all the time, but all the great work that the media and press is doing now on this particular case, and talking to relatives and neighbors and some school district people. I know some have said that they've made calls, but some have said they haven't, right? So if things are peculiar, it's important to notify the police department. We will certainly look into that information and take the appropriate action. And it may take more than one time, depending on the circumstances we find when we get there. And we know that, you know, through history and through our work with servicing agencies, the victims of domestic violence, especially, are oftentimes reluctant to come forward. And
Very common.
you know, we encourage people that are victims of domestic violence to find the fortitude to come forward, and we're here to help. We really are.
In this situation, though, it seems like, according to the police report, that his life became worse because someone reported it. And after that second DCF visit, the mother pulled him from school.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
But you still would encourage people to.
I would. I mean, because you're not going to break the cycle any other way. I mean, you know, unfortunately, in this case, it seems as if an 11-year-old was taken extreme advantage of, and at that time, you know, it's very tragic that occurred. But it will never stop, right? And this gentleman suffered for 2 decades because of that.
Yeah.
It's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but I think it's really important to never lose hope and to continue to report incidents, especially if you're a victim of neglect or a crime.
Was he in the room all the time? Because there were some reports that he was in the backyard doing chores.
He would be released from the room anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple of hours every day. You know, there were some indication during the interview that although his dad didn't do him too many favors when the stepmother wasn't around, he would stay out of the room a little bit longer.
Any motive, like any indication as to why she would do something like this?
As I said, she refused to speak to us immediately, and you know, I hope the investigation reveals more information on the reasoning.
Look into the
and
data.
motive on why.
Did he say anything?
No, not to really point to that, other than, you know, to describe the agony that he went through and the lack of understanding on why.
Will the sisters face charges at any point?
No, in speaking to the state's attorney's office, we don't believe so at this time. I mean, this is a very open case, very active case. It appears that so far.
And the sisters didn't live in the home. So with the Shanda Vander Ark and her adult son that participated, like he would lock, like he actively participated in everything. It doesn't sound like his sisters, like it sounds like the stepmother was really the main person doing all of this.
The evidence collected and the information received reveals that Kimberly Sullivan is the sole person responsible, and we're able to charge at this point in time.
Had the daughter spoken? The sister spoken at all? I don't recall them in the war.
I'm sorry?
I don't recall seeing the half-sisters names or being interviewed in the warrant. Were there attempts made to reach out to them?
Well, again, we're attempting to talk to everybody in this case, yeah.
But they said no, they're not going to comment?
At this point in time, there's been no statements taken from them. Anything else?
Can you just talk about the next steps in the court proceedings?
I think the 26th.
Yeah, so, you know, obviously she's held on a $300,000 bond. There is a possibility that she may bond out. She'd have to do that at court. And
She did.
Mark, are we aware of her next court date?
I think the 26th.
Do you have that date? 26th of March. March 26th, you will appear again.
So I have that date set aside. This is definitely a case that I will be following. When we talk about the characteristics of parents, because they have done research on neglect in children. And because this started when he was a child and continued into adulthood, it's rare that things continue for this long. And this is a very, very severe case. And I'll be interested to see what type of defense she tries in this case. I'll be interested to see if the state tries to do any type of plea deal, because the victim will likely have to go on the stand and have to testify to a lot of this. I hope they have a really good victim advocate. So, and I like talking about these things here because sometimes the lawyers do watch the coverage of these cases, and to me, a good victim advocate might try to have the victim in this case be able to testify via video conference and to not have to see her. With legal trials, defendants have the right to hear the testimony, to be able to like accurately, to like ask their lawyer questions or provide their lawyer with information. Now he might be mentally at a place where he could testify and directly in front of her. I don't know. But I'm a big victim advocate. And when people have survived something like this, I think making sure that we're not causing additional harm, because it could be this almost secondary trauma to have him be in front of her and have to like talk about everything. And then her lawyer pretty much try to call him because the defendant's lawyer is always going to try to make the victim look like there's something wrong with them, or like they're lying or this or that. And so it really, really is a difficult case. Um, it was very sad hearing about the Turpin children. So that was a case where I wonder, where within their family, they experienced significant neglect and harm. And then in foster care, they ended up experiencing SA. They ended up experiencing additional harm, which is extremely sad. And The foster parents were charged and sentenced, because it wasn't just like I think it was a group, like it was, 'cause it wasn't just one foster parent. I think it was multiple things, and so my heart goes out to those kids. Um, all right. Because it's my understanding he was eating sandwiches. He was given like, I think, when Grizzly True Crime went over everything, when he was given food, it's my understanding it was like two sandwiches a day, and that was it for a 32-year-old man. Heartbreaking case, heartbreaking story. My heart truly goes out to him. I hope that he has a phenomenal team of people around him and supports, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, he did not get the bare minimum. When we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety is like at the bottom. So food, shelter, that's at his entire pyramid was just because it was just trauma, harm. And so my heart definitely goes out. If y'all have cases that you all would like for me to cover, please make sure to leave them in the comments of this video. The next time I go live will be on Tuesday. So I am finishing up the conference. So I'm still at the conference. I will head home tomorrow. And Sunday is just going to be a get your life together day. Gonna go to the grocery store, gonna hang out with my kiddo, probably go to the park or something and just kind of relax a little, get ready for the week. And then I'll be live again on Tuesday, talking with you all about cases. I do know, so Tanika has covered some of Sarah Boone's, because Sarah Boone is still, like she still has text message. I don't know. There are things coming out with that case. I don't plan to go back to talk about those things. If Tanika would like for me to join her to talk about that, I'm open to that. But I don't have any plans to bring up Sarah on my own. No thanks. And I think that's everything. I'm also following Lori Vallows because I think jury selection might be starting soon. I saw Lawyer Lee put out a video because she's she doesn't seem completely prepared. I still have not watched Lori Vallows that interview, that Dateline interview. I just can't with her. I haven't watched it yet. I'm being honest. I because I know it's going to be a mess. I know it's going to be a mess. And I am going to watch the trial though, but I did not watch the interview yet. And so, thank you again, Lisa, for recommending this case. I truly appreciate when you all make recommendations. Um, yes. So neglect can cause the same, if not worse, harm than physical or SA. So, and the hard thing with neglect is it's not always as readily apparent. Sometimes it's harder to get the evidence because I know in my state, when they're looking at neglect, sometimes they'll go to the cabinet and they'll so parents are able to restrict food to some extent, but like the fact that he could only get 2 bottles of water and 2 sandwiches and he was severely underweight, that would have been a red flag. And so once he turned 18, it would have been an adult protective services issue. Because to me, he was a vulnerable adult. He was being held captive, which you're not allowed to do. He was not free to leave. His rights, in my opinion, if all of this is true, were severely limited, and that shouldn't have happened. That should not have happened. And so, oh my God. All right. So I appreciate you all. I will see you all on Tuesday. And I will probably do a stream talking about what I learned at the conference. And then also the new EMDR training that I'm going to start in August. So I'm going to fit a video in with all of that too. So I hope y'all have a good one. Thanks for watching. Bye.